All right, everybody, welcome back to another edition live from Drew's house, afternoon drive. Welcome on board. Good to see you. Fixing my hair. You waited till I hit play to fix my hair.
I realized it was bothering me.
Yeah.
Well,
that happens. How's everybody doing out there? Another week hunkering down in quarantine here. My wife, Sarah Conway, joins us again. How are you, Sarah?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing good. We have got the week off to a good start. We had a couple people in the airline industry yesterday. Lexi and Bill joined us, flight attendants who actually worked together. That was pretty cool. You liked that one, didn't you?
Yeah, it was a very good interview. Very interesting. I listened from the other room.
It is. That's a tough job right now. You know what hit me about that one? Besides all the pandemic talk, was that like only 1 in 10 people actually acknowledge them when they say hello getting on a plane.
Yeah, that's a little sad.
That's rude. We should think about that. I've seen a lot of stories like that about an old coworker of mine, Rod Fritz, who I used to work with, posted on Facebook saying, he said, "Thank you for all you're doing to a grocery store worker." And she like kind of got emotional and said something along the lines of, "Thank you so much for saying that. You're the first person to say it all day." And it's like, you don't really think about that sort of stuff, but those jobs, those are tough right now,
Yeah. I think people get really stressed in the grocery store and probably flying right now too. So
yeah,
they probably forget to thank people.
You're probably right. Hope Rod's doing okay as well. Speaking of the grocery store, our friend Mike McNeil just texted me moments before we went on the air here. He said he went to hit the grocery store, which he's been avoiding, so he had to do a big order. Mm-hmm. He said it has to be a line of 150 people to 200 people right now.
Wow.
And he lives in South Boston, so I'm not sure which one he's going to, but man,
that's
crazy spot to be.
Yeah, well, they're saying the surge has already hit or is going to hit this week, or we're in it, so maybe that's why. But you would think people would want to get their groceries before that.
Right. Did that deliver to your door grocery order?
Yeah, I did the Instacart thing. I don't know if it's better. It's probably, for us, it's probably better, but someone still has to go get the groceries. So it's like,
yeah. Granted,
it seemed like a young kid who probably just wanted a job, and I gave him a good tip and everything, but I don't know. That's the best thing to do.
Did I guilt trip you on that? I kept saying, wait, so you just sent somebody else in there for us? And she goes,
I was kind of thinking about that too. I don't know.
Well, that's going to be a busy business, though. I think you said we couldn't get half the stuff we ordered, right? Because grocery store was sold out.
Yeah, and all the time slots. So when I put in my order, I couldn't actually get it delivered for the next week. Yeah. So I put it in on a Monday. I couldn't get it until Sunday. So you have to plan a week in advance, and then everything I asked for, it was I had to have an alternative, a backup.
Yeah.
And most of the time I got the backup anyway, so.
Well, that's interesting. You've been liking these shows so far. Last week was good too. I was just thinking about we're on a good run of shows here from the kitchen. I really like the return of Mookie. Hello.
The worst.
It is unbelievable how much he likes the camera these days. He's on every show now.
He doesn't do this unless we're doing a show. He just jumped on our table.
I think they know this.
Mm-hmm.
There he is. Okay. We should probably take a break then and get to our guest, Dean Johnson, today, who is, you don't know Dean, Sarah. Mm-hmm. He's an old friend of mine. I've worked in the radio world with him for many years. He's also a longtime music critic. He's done newspaper writing in the Merrimack Valley. He's worked for radio stations. You could talk Oscars with him, Grammys. He knows every musician from all the way back. And we are actually going to talk about a lot of the musicians lost here through COVID-19, which should be an interesting conversation. He's a really good guy, Dean Johnson. So I'm going to let you go take care of the dog, who is very upset that we've moved him off the camera. And we'll bring in Dean Johnson here in just a moment. We'll say goodbye to Sarah and bring in Dean. All right. Dean Johnson is our guest, longtime music critic in the Merrimack Valley. He comes to us from Lowell today. Dean, long time no see. How are you, my friend?
As far as I know, we're doing well, Drew. And the way things are going these days, we take it a day at a time. But so far, so good. How about yourself?
Things are good. I just moved the dog out of the way, so he has a knack for disrupting the show these days.
They have a sense for that. They have a sense for the camera and the sense of how they can irritate their owners. It's what dogs do.
Absolutely. What is life like for you through this pandemic? You just trying to lay low and hang in and follow the rules and all that stuff, or what?
It has been all of that, and I'm thankfully able to work out of my house for the most part. But like everybody else, we're just adjusting to the new normal. I was thinking just the other day, we always want to help in every way I can with all of this. So I had an idea for a public service campaign. I wanted you to weigh in on it. Okay. And this is based on experiences I've had, and I'm sure you've had as well too. And I think the public service campaign is, don't be a jackass. Just don't be a jackass.
Yep.
I'll give you a perfect example. My wife was shopping the other day, and she said, later on, we'll talk about why I no longer go shopping with my wife. But my wife was shopping the other day, and she was at one of the local markets. And like so many of the markets, they've got the aisles all going one way now. And she said, I must have encountered when I was shopping 12 people coming the wrong way down the aisles. And when I talked to them about it, instead of saying, oh, I'm sorry, or maybe at least pretend they didn't know, they said, oh, I don't pay any attention to those.
Yeah.
Don't be a jackass.
It's so true. I had to stop in CVS just today to pick up a couple of essentials that I could get away with without going to the grocery store. And there was pretty much only one other person in the store, and she tried to return something. And the cashier said, yeah, nobody's accepting any returns. You can't return anything in a pandemic. And when the person returning the item got that news, like she was genuinely upset, just rolled her eyes, stomped her feet. And I'm thinking to myself, like, how rude can you be to this poor cashier who's, putting herself in this spot every day?
Throwing a hissy fit because she couldn't bring back the bottle of aspirin she bought or whatever it was. There we go. See? Yeah. Don't be a jackass.
There you go.
Ways that we can apply it. I think there's really a good campaign here. Part of it might be people getting adjusted to things. I'm a columnist and a feature writer for Merrimack Valley Magazine. And I'm going to have something in the May issue that I'll just refer to tease a little bit. But, when this all first began, and I went shopping with my wife at one of the local markets, and, like everybody else, as couples, we had that initial talk about how important it is for social distancing. And particularly where, thankfully neither of us have underwriting health issues, but we're near that high-end age risk group. So we had the good talk about social distancing, everything else, and the column I did in the upcoming issue of Merrimack Valley Magazine, I'll go into detail, but I went shopping with my wife, and I am doing the Watusi. I am doing everything I can in the aisles to avoid contact with people. And that first time my wife just walked into that store, I swear, I think she punched a couple of people to get to the lettuce.
Yeah.
And I kind of said, remember we talked about that social distancing? And she said, well, I am. And I'm thinking, no, she's not at all. And she wasn't intentionally doing it. It took her a while, and she has gotten up to speed. She's doing really well with that. But that initial time, I finally had to sit down and say, listen, if I get this and it takes me out, please, I don't want the reason to be listed as the deli counter.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And, it takes a while for all of us to get up to speed about that, but it's one thing to have good intentions and just to get your mindset, and then it's another to just be oblivious and not particularly care as long as your needs are met. Absolutely. Don't be a jackass. I'm not saying that to you, Drew.
I understand. We're sticking with the campaign here. I get it. And it is a stressful time too. I had a couple great guests from the airline industry on yesterday, and which is essentially, they kept comparing it to a grocery store because that's essentially what it is. If you're putting yourself in tough spots, an airplane is one of them when it comes to getting.
In a grocery store, you can better social distance than you can on an airline.
Right.
How well can you do it on an airline, really?
They are one person per row. No snacks. You get one water, that sort of thing. There's not much delivery. But what stuck out to me, honestly, the biggest surprise out of the whole interview was that this woman, Lexi, said to me, on a given day anyway, probably, and the number's down even less than that now, but sometimes you say hello to people coming on a plane, maybe 1 in 10 will kind of acknowledge you and give it back to you. And she goes, and that number's obviously even lower now. It's like, come on.
Again, don't be a jackass. Maintain your basic civility and understand these people on that plane are literally putting their lives on the line every day. Yep. Show them a little courtesy. I think that's true of, man, everyone these days is out doing that. Whether people at the grocery store or the postman. I talked to my postman the other day, and it's in a way, it's kind of nice for those guys because there's no one out there. They get nervous when they're actually at the post office. Yeah. That's about the only time they have to interact with people. And he said, otherwise, when he's doing the route, it's pretty quiet, peaceful, deadly quiet. He occasionally will interact with people like me, and I must have been 400 yards away. I was talking with him using a megaphone. Drew, I'm really trying to. Well, not really, but they're really trying to. So, but for all these people who are out there doing this, it's going to be the new way. We're going to be like this for a while, and even I think the new normal is not going to be anywhere like the normal we were compared to. Did you read the story about the last cruise ship? That almost sounds like a sitcom title.
Yeah, that just docked.
and they left in January and took, I don't know, a world tour. There wasn't a single case on the boat. So up until when they just docked, they were living the way we all used to live.
Yeah.
And they had to actually sit down and tell them, when you get off the boat, it's a whole different world now.
I know.
And you know what I think they told them? Don't be a jackass.
There you go. That is it. And how about, did you see that woman from Maine there, that fantastic story of the astronauts that were up at the space station? They just returned last week. Jessica Meir, I believe her name is, from Maine. Think about that. You're in space for a couple years, and then you come home and you're saying, wait a second, this is what we're doing?
Yeah. Yeah. I literally am coming back to a different world. It would almost be like a Twilight Zone episode if it was 10 years ago.
Absolutely.
But it's amazing how things have changed. I read this somewhere, a little known fact as we're talking about it. I think there are more astronauts from Maine than there are from any other state.
Is that true?
Natives of Maine, yeah, for some reason. They're not necessarily still living there, but there are more natives of Maine, I think, who are astronauts than from any other state.
Wow, what a unique, fun fact that is.
I don't know if that's how desperate they are to leave or what it is. I love Maine. I say that tongue in cheek. Yes. But it is a different time. I was thinking the other day, trying to look at some pluses, trying to make some positives out of this. And it occurred to me the other day, if you're a cheapskate, it's a great time to be watching television.
Yes.
Because all of the premier channels are throwing either weeks or months of free service at you right now.
Binge watch.
Cheapskates to say, I'm not paying $5 a month for CBS All Access. You can actually sign on, I think, probably still can now, free for a month, than the Disney Channel and most all of these.
Yep.
So it allows you at least to binge some interesting programs.
What's the one you're binging right now?
We did CBS All Access, so I've always kind of like, I've always been kind of a Star Trek fan. So I saw Picard and I saw the Discovery series, both not bad.
Yeah.
Caught up with the Good Fight. I would like Christine Baranski if she was playing linebacker for the Patriots. Anything Christine Baranski does,
there you go.
I'm in favor of.
There you go. We'll get the word to her.
She was so good when she was with Sybil Shepherd in the sitcom of a few years back. So we've been doing that, and then when I get bored with that, I'll probably do the Disney Channel and do the Mandalorian. I haven't done that yet. So there at least is one example. It's a good time if you're a TV watcher and a cheapskate, at least for the time.
This is great. See, this is why I remember when I used to interview you. I used to always go to you pretty much when in our days at the WBZ newsroom back in the day. If anybody was ever any big music story or really anything in Hollywood, anything like that, I could just wind you up and you could go. You were like a information booth. You had it all in the head, just ready to go. Sure, yeah, let's do it. And I used to love that about you.
Well, over the years, working as a staffer, hence the what deadline?
Yes, coffee mug. There you go. Good. You got that. What deadline?
Pardon?
Show the mug one more time. It says what deadline?
Yeah, what deadline?
Perfect. I got the because I did the music theme I don't know if you've heard of this. I don't know if you've heard of this band. They got real potential.
Yeah, I heard they're up and comers who have quite the opportunity if they avoid like so many bands bickering and breaking up.
Yes, exactly.
Otherwise, there's a lot of opportunity. But during years writing, I wrote about TV, I wrote about music, I was a movie and theater critic for did a little bit of everything. So yeah, I'm ready to go.
How's the career track? Tell me how it all started. Is it something that right out of school or whatever you knew you wanted to do, or did you fall into it lucky? What happened?
I had an older brother who was 8 years older than I was, and was coming home with all of this great music. He went to school at Tufts and was coming home with all this great music. So as a little kid, I had just immersed myself in all of these, I thought, fabulous bands, and no one that I was hanging with knew anything about these. So even starting in high school, I began to kind of like do music reviews and stuff like that for the school newspaper. I went to Chelmsford High, their little TV station in the morning, et cetera, et cetera. And I decided to go to the local newspaper and say, you need a music column for the kids here, the Chelmsford Sentinel.
Oh.
Of course, world-renowned.
Yeah.
Chelmsford Sentinel. And just out of high school, began working for them. And, Channel 5 had a program that's kind of like Chronicle that was called The Young Reporters, that had high school kids doing feature stories and the like. And from there, I met someone and did some work here and there. And then, started working for Rock and Roll magazine that was out of Maine eventually, and became the editor of the Boston edition. And from there, did stuff for the real paper when that was around. Just kept on making acquaintances and connections and moving on. And I ended up working at the Herald because someone who was at the real paper when I was freelancing for them was overwhelmed with music stuff, needed someone to help out there, and just worked through it.
It's crazy how that happens. You just kind of meet people and something opens up, you jump through it. And
yeah. Boston is too small a town to burn bridges.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Not worth it.
Yeah, for a big city, it has that small town feel, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And, I was at the Herald for 20 years and then took a buyout from them. And there was I had the opportunity to do some work for the Globe through mutual acquaintances again. And then was a columnist for them for a while. I did everything. I did a humor column with Tony V. I did a music column. I did a junk food column. I think we called it a comfort food column at the time, but it was a junk food column for a bit.
Yeah. So you're one of those. I mean, there certainly are examples of it, especially in Boston, where there is so much crossing over. But you're one of those guys who has done. You're all over the print. You did the radio thing with the overnight host of WBZ, and you did TV work. So you've pretty much crossed every medium. Yeah.
TV was just kind of like an offshoot of being a press person. You did a story or this or that. But, because of the work I did at the Herald and the Globe, and, I was on Stern Show a number of times. I sat in with Rush Limbaugh. I was a talking head on CNN at one point because of stories I had done. And the radio thing, I wrote about radio twice a week for about 20 years at the Herald. I never did radio. And then after I took a buyout from the Herald, someone that, here we go, it's all about the connections we talked about, Drew. Someone who I had known since I was an intern at WBZ FM back in 1847, who I had kept in touch with as a radio source, called me up one day and said, "Hey, I just bought a radio station in Lowell. It's News Talk. You want to be on radio?" And I'm thinking, it's 5 minutes from my house. How do you say no?
Yeah.
So we did. We jumped in there. I was there for a while and called myself the executive editor, but I ended up being the program director and did every shift at a small radio station like you do, morning, news, midday, afternoon, whatever we did. And before there was a change there in ownership and the like, which is what caused me to move on, we actually were showing up in the Boston ratings books.
Wow.
Yeah, we actually showed up in the Boston ratings book. And while I was still at CAP, that's how I ended up working originally at BZ. And then once I left CAP, I just looked to work at BZ as much as possible.
There are so many few. How do I say it? There's enough good ones out there still, but I mean the really great local radio stations are becoming few and far between, and it's such a resource. Like the people that are dedicated fans of those stations. I mean, it's like you're taking away a family member when that's removed. I belong to other stations who are no longer exist And I mean, it's hard when that local community station just kind of goes away one day, and you don't realize how good it was and how much they really paid attention to the local stories of the day.
And I think the other role that they played, they were major radio's minor leagues.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost like you could work at a AAA or a AA or starting off at a single A station and work your way through the levels, and then you're ready, you know? Yeah. So, but there's nowhere now for someone who wants to jump in the radio. I mean, you can do web radio and the like, but there's no program director to scare the daylights out of you. Right. There's no executive to beat you senseless until you really learn how to do good radio. And of course, I'm saying that metaphorically, but there's, those stations served as major radio's minor leagues. If you think of during the heyday of Boston radio, if you're going to talk about most of the personalities that were enormous in Boston radio, they spent time at smaller stations in the area or elsewhere. But those stations are disappearing now.
And it's so much fun too. I remember one of my first radio gigs was up in Newburyport, a station called WNBP. I don't know if you remember that station,
sure.
The Legends, and they put me on doing high school hockey play-by-play.
Great.
It was just such a fun experience. But I was straight out of college, had done all the college radio, but I hadn't been on in months. So I'm trying to freshen up, ready to go. And again, the listeners I've told this story once or twice before, but night one, Newburyport Clippers opening night hockey, the Zamboni breaks. And I'm up there, and when I tell you that they were not starting this game until they got a clean sheet of ice, 2-hour delay until they brought in a new Zamboni from I don't even know where, and killing time for 2 hours in a pregame show where there's nothing to go to.
Right.
I always say it was one of the best expexperiences of my career so far, because it taught me just how to keep the needle moving and interview whoever you can find. It was just great. And I remember my boss at the time came up and he goes, "By the way, you have the gig for the rest of the season. Fantastic job getting through that."
It's funny. I would tell people that about the time at BC. As you said, working overnights. I was working overnights there, fill-ins and weekends. There's no one else. There's two people in the whole studio, me and the producer, who wasn't allowed to be on the air, as you well know.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things I tell people that I learned. You just, no matter what happens, you have, as I would say it, you just have to keep dancing.
Yeah.
And make believe you're calm, cool, and collected and in control, even if the place is burning down to the ground, as it were.
Yep.
So, but yeah, you need those experiences.
Yeah, people always used to think that, because you had many great producers over the years in there, but they're not talking back with you. It's not like some of those other shows where they're actually a part of it. At BZ, you're getting callers, and if you're not getting callers, then it's all you. But I remember if you would take a night off. I always remember you had diehard fans just like all the greats. But if you would take a night off, the alarms that would go on the listeners, they would call in, "Where is he? Is he okay?" I believe it's just a night off.
Yeah. Well, that's what I realized from doing this. I covered it for years and years, but it's not the same as actually being in the chair, and you realize how personal talk radio is.
Yeah.
And people do form a connection with you. But what was interesting, the adjustment I had to make with BZ from the local station I had been at, Drew, was that the producer had a microphone and was very much a part of the show. So I could always bounce things off him. He and I could chit chat if it was a dull moment, or I would have someone to respond to any half-hearted joke I made or something else like that. There was a give and take, where at BZ, the producer literally could not get on the air if he wanted to, unless he ran out of his production studio into the studio with me. It just couldn't. He could talk to me in my ear, but he couldn't be on the air. So I really had to adjust to doing the real solo talk thing without anyone to bounce. I laugh. I'm not making fun of anybody when I do that, but I listen sometimes to Sports Talk Now, and man, they got 3 guys in the studio and 2 producers, and they can all talk at once. And I want to say, that's easy.
Yeah.
5 different people there. Okay, if you're bereft of an idea or you're having a low moment, there's not dead air. You're fighting for airtime. It's a little bit different when it's 5 hours and just you. The other difference was, too, at the station I'd been at, and maybe you went through this when you were down at working in Newburyport, Drew, the station was so small and the audience so specific that it was difficult to get callers because they didn't want to say much in the air because they knew everyone would know who it was.
Yeah. Yep.
So I learned to do talk radio without a lot of callers, but that's the antithesis of what BZ is and should be. So I kind of like had to unlearn that and learn to make it caller driven.
The good news is when you're stranded, you got stories for days. So at least you can just trust your stories. And it is kind of like a comedian though, doing a sketch and not having the crowd to, give it back to you, see if it's working or not. Right.
It was funny because you would tell a story and you're waiting for some reaction like you would if you're with a bunch of people. There's no reaction. And it doesn't mean it's going flat. There's no one responds.
Well, you and I, I've done over the phone interviews with you back in the day where I've been looking for, how it works. Let's just do a quick minute or two, get a couple of cuts on the air about this person. And with you, I found it, and usually always ended up being like 10 or 15 minutes. So I don't know how that happened, but it would just kind of naturally happen. So let's talk music a little bit. Again, we're here by Dean Johnson, longtime music critic in the Merrimack Valley. Where can we find your writings too? Because I want to make sure I keep pitching that. See your work these days.
I freelance for various people, but I'm the restaurant critic for Merrimack Valley Magazine, and I'm a feature.
A fun gig.
Yeah, I've been doing that. I was doing it weekly for the Lowell Sun for 12 years, and then I've been doing it for Merrimack Valley Magazine. It's a con. People pay me to write about eating. It's a con, but you're going to be able to express it well. So I'm doing a lot for Merrimack Valley Magazine. Have been for a while, and as a favor to a friend, I'm writing almost every issue for something called Tourist in Town up in Kennebunkport.
Oh, wow. Nice.
My family has a place up in the Maine area, and my family owned a restaurant in Algonquin when I was growing up, so the southern coast of Maine, or as most Mainers call it, real northern Massachusetts.
Exactly.
Has always been very near and dear to me. So I'm doing all kinds of different stuff for them as well, and freelancing for other people as things come up.
Tell me we can find that.
Not so much about music, but I'm very much keeping up on it. So.
Tell me we can find that article in the Kennebunk gas station up there. That's that massive plaza. Yeah. Okay.
Tourist in Town. They will have it. I've done some fun stories for them, including finding the first Krispy Kreme in Maine and being attraction because I stopped so suddenly, and what it was like to finally my first experience with Krispy Kremes years and years ago down in Myrtle Beach before they came up here. And local things as well too. It's been a lot of fun doing that. But in terms of music, as you're talking about it, because that's actually what I've written about more than anything else. And besides the Head of the Globe, did Rolling Stone, a musician, and wrote for all the usual suspects about it. I really am worried for the industry.
Me too.
Because part of what as we talk to the youngins out there. Before the days of iPods and MP3s, artists made most of their money by selling albums and singles or CDs, if you would. Mm-hmm. But they don't anymore. They make their money touring. And if no one's touring, no one's making any stinking money. They can make a little money recording and doing direct marketing and working the web and the like. But I remember there was a pivotal point. I don't remember which tour it was. I'm going to make it up and someone's going to have to check me. It might have been the Steel Wheels tour for the Stones, even though I think it might have been a later tour. And it made international news that for the first time, they actually made more money from their marketing than they did from record sales.
Wow.
No act had ever done that, certainly an act of that magnitude. But the Stones were the first one to do that. But these days now, acts make their money touring, not by selling, if you would, CDs or downloads or MP3s or whatever you want to say. So a lot of these people are in trouble. Who did I just... Oh, David Crosby says he may lose his house if he can't tour this summer. Now, there's a whole case can be made about the enormous amount of money that went up his nose over the years. They made millions and millions of dollars in the heyday of Crosby, Stills, and Nash, Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young, Nash and Crosby. He did pretty well over the years. So you can also say, well, he's got no one to blame but himself. But literally, he's saying, I expected to tour this summer. I might lose my house.
Did you see that documentary with them?
Imagine the average guy.
Did you see that documentary with them? About the neighborhood there in California where all those guys came up.
What a fabulous story that was. Netflix, I think, isn't it? Is it on Netflix?
Yeah, I think it's Netflix, and the name's escaping me at the moment, but it was great. And one of the scenes in that is Crosby.
Echoes of Canyon, I think it is.
Yep, there you go. That's it. The Canyon, yeah. What was the full title again? Did you have the full title?
Canyon, I think.
Yep, there you go. And David Crosby in that admittedly calls himself a jackass, I believe. He said he was tough to work with over the years.
I was thinking of him the other day for some reason, which shows you what a pathetic life I must be leading now that I'm thinking of something David Crosby said. But I think he had one of the great all-time quotes about a bad relationship. And it when I heard it, it just buried itself in my Abdullah Oblongata. And I'm going to steal it and use a variation of it someday. Thankfully, not because of my relationship. But he said, falling in love with Joni Mitchell was like falling into a cement mixer.
Oh, man. He's got a way with words, doesn't he?
Yeah, that pretty much, you don't need him to explain that. You know, you hear that in one sentence and you say, okay, I got it.
Yes.
Miserable fool.
That's right. It's a good one. That goes in the Canyon. That's a good one for anybody who wants to watch a 90-minute thing here and for the music junkie. A lot of great stories in that. And Jacob Dylan, I think, runs that. Tom Petty makes one of his last music appearances in an interview. So it's a really cool show. But so that's a good one. Speaking of, keep it with the music theme here for a second. How about just the losses? I mean, from COVID-19 itself, John Prine, that one hurt a lot.
I feel especially badly about that because from what I've read, Drew, his wife, who is a tour manager, came back from Europe with it. Yeah. So if it's true that she came back from Europe with it and then infected her husband who died from it, that poor woman.
Yeah. I mean,
terrible thing to have to live with.
I mean, obviously not her fault, but you're so right. I think about that all the time. It's just the guilt that just is naturally there, even though it's not your fault. It's, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I know of Prine's reputation more than I was a big fan of his, but you know what? I will always turn up whatever I'm listening to when a song like Angel from Montgomery comes on, no matter who does it. Whether it's Bonnie Raitt or whether, you know, whoever may be doing that song. Typical of just the wonderful work he did.
It's funny how he's one of those artists that kind of, and maybe you can shed some light on how this happens, but as big as he was, even I was a little late to the party on John Prine, and I love that style of music. I mean, you know, I'm a massive Dylan fan, and Dylan's a massive John Prine fan. You would think I would naturally be a big John Prine fan, but I kind of missed a lot of his stuff, and I feel like I've heard a lot of people say that. And then they say, oh, he wrote that. Oh, and that. And that one too. I guess I am a John Prine fan. You know, how does somebody kind of hide in the shadows like that while being so big?
He's been around a long time, so he's the exception. But I think, particularly in pop music, you have a long list of artists whose influence far outweighs the limit of their success. In a completely different genre, but we could just all put on the umbrella of pop music. You get someone like the Velvet Underground. Yeah. The Velvet Underground sold spit for records during their lifetime as a band, but the impact that they've had is enormous. And you do get some acts like that. I think John Prine falls into that category. I would make a point only because they're a favorite band of mine. From way back when, again, because of having an older brother. If you listen to a band like the Paul Butterfield Blues Band and the album they did called East West, they laid the groundwork, and these groups have all been very upfront about it. The Allman Brothers, the Grateful Dead, everybody that does these long, stretched out instrumental numbers, they heard that album and they said, that's it. You know, the door opened. They never sold much during their lifetime. They constantly scuffled. So it's kind of like a byproduct of the scene. There are just some artists who are artists finds, if you would. They're known to other people. There's a cult following about them.
Yeah.
And their impact far outweighs their actual success level. And Prine, for whatever reason, was one of them. He influenced so many artists.
And you saw so many of the present day big acts. My wife and I right now are going through a big Jason Isbell phase.
Oh.
We think is great. And he was very close with John Prine, like legit friends, like, you know, would go on dates, you know, his wife and John Prine's wife, and they would all go out together, and a bit of a mentor, to the point where Isbell said, I just kind of followed him around for a while, and it was just kind of annoying to him. And, you know, he started letting me play with him. But it was, he was really hurt by it. And he was Isbell was posting some video clips of, you know, shows just within the last couple of years. And Prine's up there dancing away, shuffling off stage. I mean, a guy who loved to perform and literally performed until he got sick. So it's just a really sad one that this disease has come in and literally just taken one of the greats off.
He was a superb wordsmith, but he didn't use words at the cost of the music. He was able to pair them together wonderfully, and more so than a lot of artists of that particular genre or pop music in general. He could jump into a persona. Angel from Montgomery, as an example. You know, a middle-aged woman frustrated with a marriage and a relationship. And man, he sold it. You listen to this, you say, that guy wrote this song? How is that possible? So he was able to really immerse himself in his characters, which I think is what made the music so authentic and just resonate with so many people.
I think probably my favorite song of his is Hello in There. Which is the song he writes about elderly people, and, you know, saying speak to them, and you'll end up not only making their day, but probably get a bunch of stories back at you because they've seen it all. And he wrote it at like 22, 23. And CBS's John Dickerson did an interview with him that I just watched the other day.
Right. Yeah, CBS Sunday Morning, right?
Yeah, and it was a great sit down. And he asked him, how do you write that song at 22 and 23? And he said, I guess I just always had a knack for it. They always resonated to me, and I always liked their stories. I found once you opened it up a little bit, you learned a lot. So I was like, to write that song at that age always fascinated me.
Now, the sad part of all this, and I'm not trying to be a smarty, dying is good business.
True.
And sadly, his passing exposed more people to Prine's music. If only he had been alive to enjoy the level of success and the level of critical acclaim he is getting now. But that's one of the credos, I think, of if you would, show business in general. Dying is good business.
I do it all the time. As soon as somebody passes away, even if I kind of missed the boat, I said, this is my time to kind of pay my respects and learn about him, you know? It's a real thing. And then, of course, we had Adam Schlesinger of Fountains of Wayne. That was one of those bands they were kind of big, I guess, when I was growing up, I guess would be kind of the way to say it. And I never really became a fan of them, but I know fans of Fountains of Wayne, and some of them are like diehards. Like they have a diehard fan base. And Schlesinger, of course, he's probably most famous for writing the That Thing You Do,
yep.
From the Tom Hanks movie, what was that? The Wonders.
Yeah.
Actually, the movie was That Thing You Do, right?
Yeah, I think the movie's That Thing You Do. Yeah.
The band is The Wonders. Yeah, so he wrote that song too, which was another hit. I mean, that's another loss. And I know Fountains of Wayne fans are struggling through that one right now.
You know, for a lot of people who may not have been fans of the band, they were kind of the albatross around their neck was Stacy's mom.
Yes,
and you thought of them as a novelty act, and the video made you go, ooh.
Yeah.
But it really, in fact, I just was reading something. One of the other members of the band, they said they came to learn to hate that. I'm sure that song bought them all houses on the coast in California.
Yeah.
Because it was at the height of the industry there. But they said they came to hate that song because it just kind of like labeled them with a lot of people. But if people get a chance to listen to the Fountains of Wayne song, pretty good writer. The way to turn a phrase and the way to match them with pop melodies. I was also surprised. I wasn't a big fan, a big follower of the band, but I was surprised by the overwhelming grief people that you wouldn't normally expect expressed when he passed.
Yeah.
So
right.
It's it's a frightening time. It's a frightening time. I don't know of him having any of the so-called underlying health causes. So he should have been one of those people that just came away with a bad cough and a high temperature for a couple of days, but that is what it is so evil about this thing, for lack of a better word. It's really a kind of Russian roulette. You just don't know.
It's that, I think, is what started scaring so many people, because you think I'm 33, and people my age, we're not going to get hit with this in a serious way. If we get it, it's a flu and we move on. But then people start passing away in their 30s, their 40s, their 50s, and we're saying, well, wait a second, what? It's a confusing time. Now
even kids. I just read today about a 5-year-old in the Boston area.
Yeah,
it is just. It's going to be. Well, we're just going to have to adjust to what the new normal is going to be. If there's a vaccine, that takes care of everything. I hear it may be a year or so, and I hear there may never be a vaccine or antibodies. But now they're saying, well, you could catch it more than once. No one seems to know much about it. I don't know about you, but every once in a while, I'll take if I've got a bottle of aftershave of cologne, I'll take it and spray it and say, okay, I haven't lost my sense of smell.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
All right, so get the sense of smell. Because they say that's one of the things, people lose their sense of smell and taste, which apparently, if they're able to battle the thing, they get back. But wow.
Yeah. Or, you get a headache and you say, wait a minute, everything else feel okay? Or is that just a headache, It's crazy. You talked a little bit about, from the artist perspective, about the industry. But what about for you and I, who love going to all these concerts? I mean, that's a big part of life for us. We love going to shows, and that's gonna be a while, and probably may never be the same.
Yeah, that was one of the other things I thought about. During the time that I was at the Herald and Globe, I once tried to figure out how many concerts I'd been to, and it's somewhere in 5 figures over the years. It's somewhere upwards of 10,000 over the years.
That's incredible. 10,000 concerts.
Well, let's just do the math quickly. If I was at 20 years at the Herald, and 3 a week probably is a conservative number, but we'll go with that for starters. So 3 a week, and then all that I did before and all I did after that. So, over the years, a lot in every kind of imaginable setting. And I realize now, can you conceive of a way that you're going to be able to get 60,000 people together for a major concert, or even beyond that?
Yeah.
How do you possibly practice any sense of social distancing in the kind of clubs that I always hung out with? I'm sure you did as well, hung out in rather.
Yeah.
Clubs make it even, the clubs are even more impossible. You might be able to figure out how you can do something in a stadium setting, but the lifeblood of the music industry are these tiny clubs. I don't know how you do it. Yeah. I don't do it. I don't know what we're going to do.
And that's part of it too. I mean, I used to love that. You go into a small club, or even if you go into an arena, you get down there in the pit, you're shoulder to shoulder with great fans singing along, fist pumping, that sort of thing. I mean, it's part of the whole experience, and I think it's an experience that is definitely going to change.
How do you go to
the vaccine?
Yeah. How do you go to Paradise? How do you go to Brighton Music Hall?
Yeah.
How do you go to Lowell Memorial Auditorium? Because even if the seating is going to be appropriate for the times, how do you go in? How do you go out? How do you go to the bathroom?
Yeah.
There's so many possibilities of breaking the magic 6-foot radius. It's almost mind-numbing.
Yeah.
And while we're talking music, the Merrimack Valley, can I ask you a quick quiz? This is just for the fun of it.
Sure.
How many live albums had portions of it recorded in Lowell, and who are the artists?
How many live albums? So we're probably talking the Lowell music series there?
Major artists on a major label.
Oh, geez.
I'm not going to make you sweat over this.
No. All right, go give it to me.
Well, I'm sure I don't know all of them. Joe Cocker.
Okay.
The Kinks. James Taylor.
Yep.
I believe the Black Crowes.
Huh.
Among others.
Wow.
At one point or another. Over the years, I've always found it fascinating about the music scene in Lowell over the years.
It is crazy. I think I just butchered the title too. What is the outdoor, the Lowell music?
We'll say the music series anyway.
Yeah, everybody knows it.
You might be right. They probably were. There might have been shows recorded there that I'm not even aware of. But of those, I'm aware of at least those acts, which isn't bad for a town the size of Lowell.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a lot to like about Lowell.
Now, see, that's a better slogan than "Don't be a jackass." See, that's why you're on top of it.
I don't know. Yours is catchy too. Again, Dean Johnson here. You want to do a little rapid fire? I usually like to end with some rapid fire. You're supposed to give quick answers and not really think about them. First thing that comes to mind.
Boy, you're talking to my guy if you don't want me to think about it. I'm the king. Go ahead.
All right. Favorite artist all time?
Eric Clapton.
It's a good one. Favorite show, favorite concert?
You know, I get asked that all the time, and I've seen so many that I don't think of favorite shows. I end up thinking of favorite segments.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that some of the Springsteen concerts when he was still playing the colleges, and almost any of the Giles Band shows were as good as any I ever saw.
Yeah, a couple famous live bands right there.
I saw Cream in Lowell. That's hard to beat.
Wow. How about that?
9, a little older, but not much. I'm not old enough to drive yet. I saw Cream in Lowell. That got me started. I saw Cream in Lowell, and I said, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life, but I'm never going to be far from this stuff. And so far, it's worked.
There you go. 9 years old. There you go.
That's 7th grade, whatever that was. Yeah.
All right. That's great. What is the show that caught you most off guard? The one you had low expectations, maybe as a reviewer, but you said that was absolutely fantastic.
Boy, oh boy. You know, I'm going to have a great answer for that when I'm done. But you know, when I got married, my wife had favorite acts, and I, being a good and dutiful husband, I would go to some of these shows for her. So, you know, Billy Joel early on, Hall & Oates early on. I would have normally, you know, I would rather have been staked to an anthill naked than go to those concerts at that time. But my wife enjoyed it. I went and I said, you know what? And as it turns out, she was right. These guys are pretty good.
Yeah, they all did okay.
The one advice Billy Joel gave me is he said, the legs are going to go first.
Hey, man, that guy's got a good gig, doesn't he? Once a month at MSG up until this whole thing?
Yeah, there's something deeply psychological about his unwillingness to write any new music, but that's a discussion for another day.
Yeah, that bothers me too. Well, let's stick with the interviews. Best interview you've ever done?
Probably Peter Townsend.
Interesting.
Because all I had to do was turn on the recorder, and he would actually argue with himself and take both sides of the discussion. It wasn't so much about how profound it was, but I was just struck by that. And I realized anyone who has any length of time with Townsend and doesn't get a good story is a schmuck as a reporter.
Is a jackass.
Yeah, is a jackass. That would be, well, you know what? I take that back. My favorite interview probably was with Marcel Marceau.
Interesting.
I don't know how it happened. I had no business spending that time with the man. I don't think I was even writing for the Boston paper. There was some other paper, but somehow the publicist arranged for me to sit down and just the two of us have a lunch together.
Wow.
And he was able in such a great way to express his art and his place in it in what was a second language. You know, I can't tell you how many years ago, decades ago this was, but it was something that always struck me. With all the musicians I've spoken to over the years, that was one of the ones that struck me. The two most difficult ones?
Yep, that's next.
3. I'll give you 3. Sting, but he was promoting a movie, so he wasn't talking to many music people. Brimstone and Trickle, I think, was the movie. But I somehow, because I was doing a little bit about both, snuck in to do that. And he just will enjoy torturing me. He just enjoyed torturing me. The other one was the choreographer, Twyla Tharp. She doesn't suffer fools gladly. I was doing it because I was asked to do it. You may perhaps know that I'm not a big expert on dance and choreography. That was tough. And then Dennis Miller.
Really, yeah.
Who's just a jackass. But
yeah.
We'll just leave it at that. It was the only time I almost cut off an interview. I said, you know what? you're not enjoying this. I'm not enjoying this. Let's just stop.
We're good here.
Almost did that.
What's the trick to getting the, because I find, I mean, you just mentioned a couple. We've all run into musicians in particular. You can catch musicians on a bad day, maybe a long night. It's an early morning, forced to do an interview, whatever. They not in the mood. They can be tough sometimes. But did you ever feel like you really turned an interview around? You know what, this isn't going well, but if I can get them here, let's bring them to life a little bit, him or her.
Oh yeah, and with the musicians, you got to understand the nature of the business. Most of the interviews I did were on the phone. Very rarely did I get to sit with one in person. And if they've done 6 or 7 of these during the day, what are you possibly going to ask them that no one's asked them before? But I would try to come up with a question. And I found that the whole key was to get them to converse with you and not just answer your questions. Yeah. If you could get them to do that, then your chances were good. Occasionally, if I thought I could take the risk, and this would happen because I wrote about comedy, so I talked to every comedian imaginable. Whether it was Carlin or Kinnison or Seinfeld, even Bob Hope, for crying out loud, over the years. But it would be the same thing if you could make them stop and think and converse with you. I used to joke, Barbara Walter used to be known for the interview she used to do when she said, if you were a tree in the forest, what kind of tree would be? So once in a while I'd start, if you were a tree, and I'd stop, and if they started laughing, then I knew I had.
There you go.
And if they thought I was serious, I knew it was awful. But the one I can think of is, oh my goodness, the Shakespeare trained actor, Kevin Kline.
Yeah.
He was doing a movie, I think, where he played Cole Porter. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but he did a movie. I didn't do movies much, but they'd have me interview some of the artists sometimes. And in the movie, he does a song and dance routine where he kind of like, let's see if I can even pull up. If you can imagine your typical dining room table, can I jump up to a dining room chair? A chair like this.
Yep.
He kind of like jumped up on the chair, kept one foot on where we would sit and the other foot at the top, and tilted the chair over and kept dancing. So we started the interview. I said, all right, the first question I'm going to ask you is the most important one of this interview. And so he kind of goes forward and he said, yes. I said, how many takes did you require to do the chair segment? He said, I didn't want to take. I said, I don't believe you. I did. I said, I do not believe you. And that give and take kind of like opened things up. And by the end of the interview, again, how many interviews has Kevin Kline done, for crying out loud? All he done. By the end of the interview, he kind of sat back and said, nice job. Really? And I thought, okay, take that one to the bank. But that's what I just kind of like started something out of left field. Then we said, I didn't want to take it. I said, no, you didn't. I did. I said, I don't believe you. We chitted about that, and it just opened up, and then, but the trick is to be able to get someone to converse with you, not just answer your questions. Sometimes, you only get 15 minutes on the phone. You just got to go out and just bang away at it. You don't have a choice.
Yeah.
But if you can do that, that's the key to the good interview.
That's cool. Did you hear the dog? He liked that story.
I like that. Who knew that Clyde has so many canine fans?
Exactly. You're big in the dog world. How was Seinfeld, by the way? I'm watching his comedians in cars getting coffee, and I'm enjoying it very much. I love his interviewing style. How was he to interview?
He was still playing Catch a Rising Star when I first began talking to him, which was a basement comedy club in Harvard Square.
Oh, wow.
He was pretty good. But there are some comedians who do the same thing every night, and they make it try to sound spontaneous, but they might as well be reciting lines in a play. Seinfeld writes, at least at that time, he wrote every day. Yeah. Every day he was writing, and he would test about what works and what doesn't work, and this and that. When I was working at BC and I'd have comedians on, one of the credos of the comedy business is if you get comedians together, you have to understand that because of the nature of their business, the only thing that gets them is sometimes the most over-the-top, either dirty or awful or violent jokes, because they hear everything else all the time.
Yeah.
And usually if a comedian likes something, he won't laugh. He'll say, oh, that's funny.
Yeah, he does that all the time.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
So whenever I had comedians on with me at BZ, Tony V is an old compadre and some of the other guys on. If I got them laughing, then I figured I had done my job. Yep. If I can just mention, do we have time?
Sure.
I had Tony V on a lot at BZ, and it was like the couple of times where I had Charles Laquadera on, where I would tell the listeners, I said, okay, now here's what's going to happen. Within 2 minutes tops, I'm going to lose total control of the show. And I just want to prepare you, but don't be scared. It'll all work out. And with Charles, it happened right away. But a typical example with Tony, I was asking, how his kid's doing. He's got a daughter and he's got a son, and his son has started doing comedy. I said, Tony, he said, I tried to do everything. I just couldn't die. And his daughter has become an actress of some note. And she was in a version of Cabaret and was playing one of the ladies of the evening. And he said, she got rave reviews from a lot of people, and he's kind of hesitating. I said, I wasn't sure. You didn't know how to take it when everyone said your daughter played a great whore, right? And he just fell off the table laughing. That's exactly it. That's exactly right.
Oh man, that's too funny. And Laquadera, he sells out. What was it? 3 nights at the was the Orpheum or one of the Boston places? Like just
it's the Wilbur, I think.
The Wilbur. Okay, yeah.
I went to the first show that he did of these at the Paradise, and let me just quote The Who. Rarely a wrong thing to do. I won't get fooled again.
Okay, fair enough. Did you have to write a review for that?
He's had a lot of time to work on that since then, so probably by now it is well. But again, I thought it was going to be a bunch of his people that knew him from the radio and music community, and it was kind of like open the general public. And for the average person listening to Laquadera for all those years, it might have been a magic night. So yeah. I don't want to demean it too much.
Yeah, well, very good. Dean, this was, I always say my favorite thing I can say about a guest is when the hour flies by, and I can't believe an hour has already gone by. So
really?
Thank you. Yeah, I know, right? Thank you very much. It's been great.
I still got another sheet of stuff.
Well, we'll do it next time. Let's make you a return guest. How about that?
Sure. That'll be.
Let's get, we got to make sure we get back to a concert soon, right? I mean, I know you miss it, but this is a weird time to be living through, right?
Trying to watch a streaming concert or trying to watch concerts online or on Netflix or whatever, it's just not the same. It's okay, but it has to be done for a number of reasons, for the sake of the artists and the sake of the fans. But the sad thing is, I don't see how it's going to happen. And someone will come up with an idea that'll work, or maybe they'll do the antibody tests and then wouldn't that be terrible? You can go in. No, you can't.
Yeah.
But they'll work it out somehow, but I just hope it's soon.
A lot of smart people. Let's hope we get a vaccine, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's that time of year too. This is the time of year I start thinking concerts a lot too, because everybody tours in the summertime. You get small venues, big venues, and I miss it already.
Outdoor shows on a perfect summer night, a great concert. What beats it? What beats it?
Nothing. Let's hope we're all back there soon. Dean Johnson, man, always a pleasure. Stay safe, all right?
Be safe and be well, Drew. Always good talking with you.
Cheers to you with my Beatles mug. All right. We'll see you soon, bud. Thanks for doing it.
Of course. We'll do it again. Take care.
All right. Good stuff right there with Dean Johnson, longtime music critic, longtime writer in the Merrimack Valley, coming to us from Lowell today. Great guy. I've always enjoyed conversations with him over the years. One of those guys that has just seen it all. In the media business, print, radio, television. Love talking with guys like that who just can give you stories and stories. Full disclosure, off the air, we talked for like 45 minutes too, just because I love the stories he has. So we'll make sure to have him on again someday. I know that went well, and I know a lot of you will like that. A big thank you to Dean Johnson. A lot of fun with him today. Stay safe, everybody. My name is Drew Moholland. This has been another edition live from Drew's house here in my kitchen. Hope you're all enjoying these shows. I feel like it's another strong week here, guests. So we appreciate all the guests, and we appreciate all the frontline workers out there battling this pandemic in the surge of it right now. Thank you to all the frontline workers. All right. Stay safe out there. Stay home, everybody. and just let's get through this. My name is Drew Moholland. This has been Afternoon Drive. Bye-bye now.